Good morning and welcome back. Today we're working on an Artley flute. What we want to do is change all the pads on this. This thing, this is like nuts. There's the pad. This is the G key, and we'll be working on that as our example. This pad right here is rubber, and I'm not real thrilled with that. Also, it's not playing well. So we're going to take that off. When you look at this thing, you will see that right here, there is a screw in the center, and then there is a metal washer, and that's what holds the pad in place. And we'll just go ahead and remove that screw. Screw comes out. Now, I'm going to put those into a little holder here so that they don't get lost. And we'll pull off this old pad. And we'll call that garbage. When we are changing pads on the flute, we want to measure the inside of the cup, because the entire pad will fit inside the cup, unlike the clarinet, which has a lip and you would measure the outside of the cup. Well, we talked about that in our clarinet video. So again, measuring in millimeters, what we're going to do, see what we get here. And that's saying 17.5. So the other thing I want to do is I'm going to measure the thickness of the old pad. It's been crushed down a little bit, so there is that. But I'm coming in at about 2.8, right about 3 millimeters. So I probably want about 3 millimeters in there. And here is our new pad. This is a 17.5. And that is measuring in at just under. That might not be. It's like 2, almost 2.5. So this might not work out too well. And that's not playing really well. So it may be that we want a somewhat thicker pad. It's just kind of a really rough guideline. There's only really one way to find out what you're going to put in there. We have a couple of flute stems. Here's one here. This is a 2 millimeter, and this one is a 1 millimeter. And it's really nice that they're different colors, so it's easy to tell. We're going to try the 2 millimeter first. It may be a little thick. Go ahead and slip that in there. And we're going to put our pad in. I'm not going to tie it down, though. Not quite yet. Okay? I just want to see how far it sticks out and whether or not it sticks out too far. We have the rod, and that's going to go inside this tube here. But that rod's pretty cruddy, so let's just go ahead and clean that off a little bit. This is like 600 grit. Might be 1200 grit. I'm not trying to take off material. I just want to clean off the crud. A little denatured alcohol works on this. Works really well also on trying to clean these things up. All right. Yeah. The key goes in right here. When I put this key in, the foot has got to go under this spring so I can go around to the back. There we go. And there's that top G key. Normally this is like about the last key that you put on, but for purposes of demonstration, it's really easy to get it in and out. Make sure I'm lined up. Slide that in. Give it just a turn or two so it'll stay put. And the key is in, and we have a problem. If you look at that key, a little hard to see with this one in the way. Let's drop that. Let's put that G sharp lever down a little bit. You can see that there is a space at the front of the cup. Okay? It's right up here. The key is actually landing on the back. This will be a little bit more difficult to see to get the angle on this. When the key comes down, it lands on the back here, but it's not lying flat. And we have some space. Now, yeah, you could have the player push down to make up the difference. But you really want to start with the thing coming in as flat as possible. It makes it easier for the player. So the 2 millimeter is probably a bit too much. So we're going to go ahead and take this thing out. And we'll take the pad out. You want to be kind of careful about doing this to lift those things out so that you don't tear. The pad is felt with a backing, and over it is a very thin bladder of probably fish skin. It's very thin, it easily tears, and if it tears, it's going to leak, and that's going to be a problem. So let's pop out that 2 millimeter. Let's try the 1 millimeter. Put that in. Put this back in. Okay. And I'm going to slip this back on. Give this a couple of turns. Just to kind of hold it in place while I fiddle with it. And let's go ahead and load that spring. And I could probably use a screwdriver for that. There's my spring. And it's going to go up there. And all I got to do is get under there and see if I can't push it into place. There we go. Spring is loaded. If we come down now, there we go. That's nice. As we come down now, I'm going to turn it just a little bit so you can see that space. See how that lands really nice and flat at the front? That's what we're looking for. Now we need to check for any leaks. And for that, what we really want is a piece of cigarette paper. We don't care what you normally roll in it, but you need to have cigarette paper whether you roll anything in it or not. This is really super thin stuff. And because of that, we can put it in right here. We can start at the front. And we'll just close the key down and give it a little tug. Acts as a feeler gauge. And that's nice and tight. Now we're going to want to work our way around the key. Check the sides. Just a light pressure. And see if it tugs just a little bit. And then we're going to want to get to the back. It's always a little tricky getting to the backs. Good. And we'll check this side. Yeah. And just kind of work it around. Check different places. And getting to the back of this one from this side is always a little tricky because that key's in the way. But there we go. Nice and tight. Okay? Having set this one pad, I have found that what I really need is that 1 millimeter, and I'll be putting that in all of the keys that I do. You always want to kind of dry test it, as it were, before you do anything else. Now we know that we've got the right pad and the right shim. We can go ahead and put that right there, put our washer on, and we'll take our little tiny screw and just kind of set that in place. And if you put your thumb on it and just feel around, you'll find the stud in there. And then you can go ahead and find the socket, and then you can go ahead and actually use your thumb to turn it to get it started. And then we can go ahead and tighten it down. There. And the next thing we want to do is we want to iron the felt. Flute pads need to be ironed. I have 2 rings here. I can use this one, or I can use this side. I'm going to use this side. I have a little tray of water and an eyedropper. And I'm going to want to go ahead and soak that pad. Now, it will get in there. So just let that set for a moment. I'll show you something here. Yeah. When we did our clarinet pad, we needled the pad to let the gases out when we heat it up and put it in the cup. We don't need to do that here because the center hole has got just a little bit of space to the felt so that any air will escape through the center hole, which is kind of convenient. Need our lighter. Take this and we're going to just heat that up enough. As soon as that drop of water, I just put a drop of water on it. As soon as it sizzles, we're hot enough. Bingo. Now we're just going to have to take this and apply it just like that. Press it down a little bit. That will then heat up that felt and compress it. Okay? Next step. The next step is to seat this thing onto where it belongs. So again, I'm going to kind of put a little water on there. And I'm going to put it in place. You'll notice the last time I put this thing on, I had to argue with that spring a little bit. I'm not arguing with it this time. Here's the spring clip. Here it is. There's the spring clip right there. That's where the spring attaches. So if I put this in carefully enough, sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. But what you want to do is you can put it in such a way, sometimes, that you can capture that spring. So that as it goes in, the spring you can push back that spring while you're getting the key in place. That way you don't have to argue with the spring quite as much. Looks like it's still going to be a bit of an argument, but hopefully, there we go. Okay. Now, because the spring is in there, we got to hold it in place like this, and that's going to be its own little argument. Line it up. Oh, come on. Talk to me. There we go. In it goes. Plan that rod. Again, just enough to hold it in place for the moment. Because I'm going to have to take it apart and do the other one. But for purposes of instruction, as it were, this is a key clip. And we're going to put this on just like this. And that way it clamps on. Okay? Putting that clamp on clamps that key down so that now we've got some pressure going on that pad. The tone hole the pad is now being pressured against the tone hole. That's going to start to begin to create a seat. And to help it along a little bit, turn on our hair dryer and blow things all over the place. But we'll heat that up a little bit. Actually, a lot. There we go. And we're set. We're just go ahead and let that seat and it'll be done. Here's one that I did. I did the G sharp key yesterday. And if you look here, you can just see inside. If I can turn it just where you can see it. There's the key. And if you kind of peer inside there, you can just see the mark that is made by the seat. Okay? There we go. That seat will guarantee that the air doesn't leak out and that the instrument will play well. Most of the keys on the flute are going to be of the type that we've just discussed. But there are 3 keys that are slightly different. So I'm going to set this aside for the moment. That'd be your B key here and your trill keys. These go in with a pad that is similar to a clarinet pad. The pad just goes straight in, and they glue in. They don't screw in. I've already done them here on the trill keys. Okay. There's my trill keys, and I've already done these. We're going to do this one. And I want to show you the difference between these kinds of pads. I've already measured it. It's a size 11. So let's take a look at a size 11 clarinet pad. And you'll readily see the difference. The clarinet pad, right there, has an indentation to it. It has a ridge. So that basically the inside of the pad is a smaller diameter than the outside of the pad. Let's see if we can get it here. Okay, that'll show it really well. See that edge right there? Okay, this is the inside, this is the outside. As we said, with a clarinet pad, you measure the outside because you've got this lip here that goes over the cup. However, by comparison, here is a flute pad, and this thing is just straight, slightly tapered, but it's basically the same all the way around. And for this, you would measure it on the inside of the cup, and this is an 11 here. Now, we'll take and grab our lighter again. Other than that, we do this pretty much the same way we do a clarinet pad. Set that up. Find my needle. Okay, I'm going to needle this down here fairly low. Just poke a hole. That way the gases can escape and the felt and the bladder will sit flat. Then we'll take a little bit of this cup, little stick shellac, heat the cup, move this over here, move a few things out of the way, heat the cup over the candle, get some shellac in there. There's a bit of an indentation there, so you want to fill that space. And let that sit and run for half a second. Set this somewhere where it won't stick. And slip our pad in. And now it's just a matter of getting that pad to sit nice and perfectly even. And you can basically eyeball this. But we'll know more when we put the key on, because when we put the key on, it will either hit flat and close perfectly, or it will miss a little bit. When you put the key on, this is the key that's going to go right here. Okay. When that comes down, it should hit nice and flat. If it turns out that it doesn't, you don't necessarily, and this will, you don't necessarily have to take the entire key off. One trick that you can use is to get a small electronic style soldering iron. Okay? You can heat that up, and if the key is already sitting in place, let's say, for instance, well, here it is. Let's say that it's sitting in place and we find that it's just slightly off. You can heat the cup up from here with this. That will warm the glue up enough that the pad will float and wiggle inside the cup, so that you can just kind of press down lightly with this and press down where you want it to go and move that pad around without having to take the key off. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the essence of changing a flute pad.